Hi, this is Professor Cordes, and this is the Week 2 lecture video for English 123 Intermediate Composition. This lecture video, ladies and gentlemen, will talk about two components. One is the idea of research. How do we conduct research and do research well? And then the other component is annotated bibliographies. An annotated bibliography is simply documenting your resources as you go along to whether they are helpful or not, kind of like an evaluative process. In the weeks to come, there will be an annotated bibliography assignment. So this is kind of setting you up for success in the preliminary stages. So first things first, this week is all about research. During week 1, you looked at a possible topic, you kind of formulated your ideas, you did a little pre-writing assignment. This week, you will notice down here below, you are actually kind of almost solidifying, firming up your ideas about the topic that you want to discuss and the academic conversation that you want to be involved in. And you're putting that onto the discussion board, and then students are replying back to you. Please remember that even as you are piecing things together, there will still be components that shift and change and modify as we progress through the next couple weeks. So our goal is to get to week 7 where the final product is due. But right now in week 2, we need to kind of begin to gather that information. So we have an idea, we have a thought, we have a potential topic. Now our goal is to go into research and begin to find things out. So the first activity that you have is a library research activity. You are essentially looking for different resources, a book, an online journal, a journal article, things that coincide with your topic. So if you're thinking about doing something in Christian studies, you're thinking about doing something for the economy, you're thinking about something for psychiatry or sociology, you're going to take that topic and you're going to begin to brainstorm and just kind of see what's out there, right? It's the idea of kind of a hunt, kind of a scavenger hunt in which you go out and you select certain things to see, is this a right fit for my conversation? So one of the first things that you can do is actually, let me jump over here. It's California Baptist University. If you go all the way down to the bottom, there is a place, resources, library. You can click on library. And this right here is a great starting point. CBU has put time and effort and money and blood, sweat, and tears into creating the best possible resources for you, or having the best possible access to resources for you. So what you can do is you can look here in the database. There's journals, there's references. So let's say that I'm looking, well, that's my last name. Let's say that we're looking for something in regards to sociology, right? And I need to log in first. Oh. Okay, when you have to like change your password and then you have to change it again. Here we go. It's coming up. So if I was to do a topic on sociology, maybe that's my major, I want to hone in a little bit more as far as what my topic is or what I'm interested in studying. So this is where you can put optional fields. So maybe I'm looking at sociology, but I'm looking at relationships in, a socioeconomic low community. What does that look like? What does it look like to do, psychiatry and look at a particular area of study? What does it look like to do? I'm at a loss for words simply because the ideas are endless. Let me just use mine as an example. I think I mentioned this before that for my undergrad work, one of the things I wanted to study was the psychological importance of male relationships within adolescence. I primarily wanted to look at how do these characters in literature resemble what a reader would actually feel and experience that's necessary for their growth and maturation in life. Kind of like a coming of age story, right? For any hero, any small child, any child in general. But what would that look like? So I would type in things like male relationships. I would type adolescence. I would type in human development. Anything and everything that you would want to explore could be brought up here. So let me back up. Let me use mine as an example. Let's say Lord of the Flies. Okay, that was one of the texts I wanted to use. And I'm going to click on that, and it's going to bring up a bunch of different material. One of the great things that you can do, I'm going to move myself off to the side here. You can go for like full text if you want to go for scholarly journals. If you want to look for things that are just at the CBU library, you can do that. Your filters over off to the side here are going to be very beneficial for you. So one of the ways to do that is to kind of get your topic and then kind of begin to narrow it down. My students, not only do I teach here at CBU, I also teach secondary education. I teach high school English. And one of my projects that my students work on when my sophomores is when they read Heart of Darkness. They talk about the racial implications of a white perspective on an African-American community. So we really pull apart and dissect this idea of race, this idea of perspective. I bring in Achebe from the author of Things Fall Apart, because he has written articles about Heart of Darkness, and we begin to have this dialogue. And one of the things for us as researchers is we need to I understand that there's a conversation. So even though this is titled like arguing a position, you have a position, but you're in a bigger conversation. So even though, let's use my example of like race and the perspective of race and culture in Heart of Darkness, we have to take in Joseph Conrad's perspective. We have to take in Achebe's perspective. We have to take in the culture's perspective. We have to take in historical value. So I am pulling from all of these different components to try to see what's going on for this particular topic, for this specific discussion that we are having. So I always tell my students, it's not that there's a right or wrong, and it's not about solving a problem. It's about exposing ourselves to this discussion. It's about enlightening ourselves to what this other person has to say and understand so that we can be a better person, have more knowledge so that we can then return back and give back to the conversation. So with that being said, as you can begin to conduct your research, you're going to type in things in here that are beneficial for you. So if you're going into marriage and family therapy and you are a follower of Christ, what does it look like to incorporate religious views into marriage and family therapy? Let's say that you are going into kinesiology. What does it look like to take your kinesiology degree, whether that be into education again, whether that be into the medical field? What does that look like to help people or get them to a place of good health? So, or are we going into like there's so many arenas or so many avenues in which we can take for this, that this is the part where we begin to gather. Okay. And it will seem overwhelming. So as you conduct this, you can go to journals. There's different databases depending upon your subject area. So as you go through, if you want to select a subject, so let's say that you are going into early childhood development, okay, early childhood studies, that's where you would go, right? If you want to go into law or marketing or like physics, great. This will help kind of narrow things down. If we were to do just a general Google search, we would end up with hundreds of thousands of hits that may or may not pertain to what we're talking about. So our goal here during the research activity is to kind of gather and see like, this is good, this is not good, and kind of begin to evaluate, is this part of the discussion that I want to have? Okay. If you look, let me jump back over here to the assignment itself. It says you will use the library databases to find 3 sources that you might use for your research paper. So if you do, great. If not, that's okay. This is all practice. At least one needs to be a book. At least one needs to be a journal article. The third can either be a book or an article, a website, video. It is becoming more relevant now that podcasts are a thing, that like TED Talks, any sort of information that's put out there will help you with that. But what you're going to do is you're going to head over to the databases. There's all of these different ones. The one search is listed in the description of the assignment, simply because this is a one-stop shop for everything. So you can definitely put it in there. But with all that to say, this is where you're starting to gather this information, and you have to be kind of aware of, is this good or is this not? Okay. If I'm going into education and I'm wanting to find out the best practices for the 4th grade, if I just simply go to Google, I might get Miss Miller's 4th grade class out in Ohio who has a blog. I don't know if she's credible or not. I don't know her teaching styles. I need to go to someone who is published. I need to go to someone who is a critic and scholar in that academic area of field. That's why we're looking through these things here. Okay. So one of the other components, or one of the other resources that you can use, is a basic Google Scholar search. So it's not a regular Google search, it's a Google Scholar. So if you simply type in Google Scholar, this will come up with articles, journal entries, essays. This will come up with items that pertain to your topic, but are in the academic realm. So this would, if I typed in Lord of the Flies, this would remove like the movies. This would remove Amazon review summaries, right? This helps me to kind of hone in on what I want to focus on. So one of the very first tasks that you're going to be doing is this research activity. Okay. Decide if you want to do APA or MLA format, depending upon your major. There's a list here of all of the different ways that you can format your items. So gather your information and then get to put it into there. You are going to have a works cited page. Okay. You will also use these resources for your annotated bibliography later. In annotated bibliography is kind of giving a summary, kind of giving a response, and almost an evaluation of that resource itself. So let me give you an example of an annotated bibliography. If you look here, just a simple Google search will bring up the fact an annotated bibliography is a list of sources, and you're going to have 3 for this week, with a short paragraph about each source. Okay. You are doing an annotated bibliography later. You're not doing it right now, but this information will be relevant. So when I was an undergrad, I would go into the library and I would mark down the MLA citation. I would write down all the resources, and then I would kind of give myself like 2 or 3 sentences of like, this was a really good book. It had a great table of contents. The appendix was awesome. Like this pertained to my topic in X, Y, and Z form. I would just write down notes to myself, which later became an annotated bibliography. But it's essentially a short paragraph about each resource. So annotated bibliographies, and this is one of the best resources I have ever found for formatting, for research, for putting your papers together. It's the OWL from Purdue University, their online writing lab, OWL. And I use this daily in my classroom simply because this is constantly up to date. This constantly has the newest information in the academic world as far as how do we present our papers and what do they look like. Excuse me. So for this, annotated bibliographies is where you offer some sort of annotation after your resource. So at the very top of the page, and I believe there's an example. There's an example around here somewhere that I need to click on. What you're looking for is essentially what's going on for that text. So imagine for a second you walk out of the movie theater, or you just finished watching a movie. You thoroughly enjoyed it. It was entertaining, and someone asks you about that movie. You essentially offer them a small summary like, oh, it was a great film. I totally laughed. I loved this part right here. This actor is fantastic. I think this, like, you offer some sort of summary, and you offer like, was it beneficial? Was it not? I mean, there are definitely times when we walk out of the movie theater and we're thinking, I can't believe I wasted my money on that movie. That was not as good as it could have been, right? I think they should have done this, or they should have done that. That's what we do with annotated bibliographies, is we look at a resource, we look at information, and we say, this is good because, this is not good because. So in annotated bibliography, one, it kind of summarizes what the article is about, what the text is, what the context or content, excuse me, is of that resource. Kind of paraphrasing, summarizing what's happening. Is it beneficial for your evaluation? Does this book contribute to the conversation that's happening around you? Okay. So as I was doing my research for male relationships in adolescence and how that the psychology world views the importance of cognitive development and social development and human development, there were conversations about the female characters and having female relationships. And while that is good and while that is important, it didn't pertain to the point I was trying to prove. So I still needed to reference to it, like, this is a good text. However, it primarily focuses on the female relationship versus the male relationship. And this is the direction that I'm going. It's okay to say this is part of the conversation and this is not part of the conversation. So a lot of times students in my 10th grade class, when we're talking about Achebe and we're talking about Heart of Darkness and the clash between races and the way that people are viewed and how they are being viewed and how they're being presented to others, they will bring in modern day references, which is fine. However, it doesn't pertain to our conversation. So I have to remind them and reiterate that even though those conversations are valid and good, they still don't pertain to what is happening in the moment of that text, because that is the pivotal point of moving forward. So I have to kind of help them shift from the now to the then, and what was the climate, what was the culture like then, and how do those things evolve? Okay. So you can do the same thing. As you conduct your research and you go here and you find all of this information, it's okay to say like, oh, this is a good book. It's just not for me. Oh, this is a really good resource and they talk about X, Y, and Z, but it's not for me. It's okay to say that. Like, this is a fantastic article and I want to use this article because X, Y, and Z. Then there you go. So annotated bibliographies, as you go through, are going to summarize. They're going to assess kind of evaluatively on the topic itself. And then they're going to reflect on whether it's good or not, all of those components. As you conduct your research, make notes as far as what the book contains, what the article contains, what the content is like, if it relates to your subject, if it relates to your conversation. And you can put those 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sentences together, and then that becomes your annotated bibliography. So it was real easy for me as an undergrad because I had all of my notes and I would say like, oh yeah, I remember this book. And I could quickly come up with a 4-sentence, 5-sentence annotation that would coincide with my resource. Okay. So with that being said, let me come back over here to our class. You are conducting research and you're going to go out there, you're going to do your best to begin to pull, shift, change, modify however you see fit. The excuse of, I couldn't find anything, is not really relevant when we have everything at our fingertips. We need to be able to say, look at it from different angles. So even if you do a basic research with your subject title and your topic or the argument that you want to position yourself as, that's a good starting point, but then begin to pull that information. Read, skim through, scan through the material so that you can begin to understand, what are people talking about? What are people saying in regards to these conversations? Okay. That's part of your research. You're putting those three things together. By the end of the week, you will have presented your, here's my topic, here's my discussion that I want to do, and then you're going to respond to others offering some feedback. You have now been, like, for a week, almost 2 weeks, thinking about this topic, absorbed by this topic. It will be beneficial for you to walk away, look at something else, deal with something else, and then come back to your own writing. And we'll talk about that during the writing phase as well, as far as like managing our thought process. But you have been researching your own idea. So the reason why we have you respond to classmates is simply to get out of your own topic, help someone else for a brief moment, and then come back. Kind of helps us reset, if you know what I mean. So as you go through, if you have questions or concerns regarding the research, regarding like the avenues, the ventures, the process itself, please let me know. I'll get back to you within 24 hours. But this is the fun part. This is like the hunt and gather the information that's going to pertain to your topic. And you get to say, like, this is good and this is not, and here's why. And so have fun with this, enjoy this. If you get overwhelmed, take a moment to stop, take a break, and then come back so that you've got a set of fresh eyes. But go have fun. This is a great way to investigate your topic and see what the world has to say, see what the conversation is going in. You are jumping into an academic conversation, and you need to see what other people are saying. So email me if you have any questions or concerns. Happy hunting in your research.